guys? Nick here from Nick's Reptile World. I am joined here by Tom, and we have something that we want to talk about. So on February 4th of 2022, an amendment to the Competes Act was made to include HR 4521. What this means is that they are attempting to combine the original Lacey Act and the Competes Act together into one big bill, essentially. And with the addition of HR 4521, they have changed around their use of words in hopes to go unnoticed by pet owners around the United States. It's kind of just like they're just trying to avoid retaliation from the communities of, everybody that's affected by this. So the Competes Act is now attempting to change the Lacey Act's white list of animals to a black list. So what this essentially is doing is any animal that is on their list, their white list from the Lacey Act, that is listed as injurious or whatever, you can still transport them technically if you have the proper licensing. Now, since they've changed it from a white list to a black list, now any animal that is deemed by, Fish and Game or whoever ends up being the one to determine this list, any animal that is on that, you cannot, for any reason, transport them in the United States or out of the United States. So within the states, you're not allowed to transport them across state lines. You can't import or export from other countries. This is huge. Now, according to the National Animal Interest Alliance, all species aside from livestock and domesticated cats and dogs, will be labeled guilty until proven innocent. So basically any animal that they think could cause any harm. So like even a ball python could hurt somebody if they bit them, which is extremely rare, but technically that would make them injurious. The Competes Act is trying to withdraw state regulation, and they're trying to make it a federal law to basically ban these animals outright. So any animal that could be labeled as an invasive species in the state of Florida will also be labeled the same in some place like Minnesota, or northern Maine, where I could literally have a ball python that they could label as injurious or invasive because in Florida that's possible. They can be invasive in Florida if somebody left them out in the wild because that's the right environment for them. But even if somebody had released an animal into the wild like that in the north, in Maine, where it's winter like 2/3 of the year, it's gonna die. How could any animal like that be invasive to a state like mine? It makes no sense to me. So these lobbyists are trying to make it so that possession of wildlife, even if it's deemed previously on a state level as a non-invasive species, much like the orange crayfish, which is a very common pet in the aquarium trade. The orange crayfish was literally labeled a score of 0 on invasive, on the scale of invasiveness. This is the lowest you can get. They're not in any way, shape, or form a threat to the native population, but they have 2 invasive species that can be found basically everywhere in the United States, that they're trying to use those as a blanket cover for dealing with that and not having to educate law enforcement on the specific species and animals that they are required to take action on. So any banned species. And you gotta keep in mind, when people who don't understand animals, like for instance in the reptile world, when somebody hears python, they think, oh, this big snake that's very aggressive, very mean. But right here I have Tom. He's literally the sweetest snake I have. I could honestly do whatever I wanted with him and he'd be perfectly fine. I could hand him off to a child. That's how docile he is. And that's how much trust me and him have earned over time. He is not a danger to anybody. He hasn't bit me since he was a baby. this is probably the most docile snake I have. If you transport any animal that is on this black list, you will be charged a fine of $20,000 and or up to 5 years of time in prison. I don't know about you guys, but most reptile hobbyists or just animal hobbyists in general can't afford a $20,000 fine. I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't make it very far in jail. I'm skinny, I got a baby face, it's just not gonna work for me. Keep in mind, this is huge. It doesn't just affect, small businesses. It affects big chains too, though they're trying to make it so that they can kind of pick and choose what animals will be on this list to kind of make them more of a profit, since they'd be canceling out mom and pop stores, most likely, since they haven't said anything about this whatsoever. This affects people all over the world. Especially zoos and research facilities where they're doing everything they can for conservation, like breeding colonies. Like for example, Chandler's Wild World. He breeds venomous reptiles so that he can basically have a backup population for the wild, because these animals are being destroyed by human reach. And we need to do something to stop that. And if we can't import or export or go across state lines with animals, and obviously venomous reptiles are going to be completely, most likely banned in the United States, we can't create these colonies. We can't repopulate the wild. And we're going to basically lead them to extinction because of humanity's reach. One last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is it doesn't matter, if you're into reptiles, amphibians, avians, which is birds, aquatics, or invertebrate, exotic mammals. It doesn't matter what you're into. If you are a hobbyist of any of these categories, when they get away, or if they get away, with merging the Lacey Act and the Competes Act into one big, bill, essentially, or act, you'll no longer be able to transport these animals across state lines or import or export them into different countries. This is on us. This is on the animal hobbyists as a whole. We all need to write our senators, and I've seen a lot of people pushing their senators and pushing, this stuff up to the highest chain of command as possible. And we're making a lot of progress, but we're still far away from being, victorious in this fight to keep our animals and to keep our businesses. Anyways, guys, that was just a quick update. Kind of tell you what's going on with the Competes Act and the Lacey Act, where it's at right now. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram and my Facebook. I'm Nick from Nick's Reptile World. This is Tom, and we're going to catch you later. Peace.